Right, we're ready. Let's go. Welcome, welcome. If you're just arriving, if you've been here for a whole 30 seconds, it's brilliant to have you. Welcome, everybody. This is the Faith in Kids Nehemiah Showcase. We're very excited. We're going to be talking to you this afternoon about our brand new, very sparkly, very exciting resource on the book of Surprise, Surprise, Nehemiah. So we're the Faith in Kids team. Faith in Kids, we're passionate about confident parents and thriving churches working together to raise children who trust in Jesus eternally. And this resource today is just one of the ways that we want to do that. So we're here to dive into it, to learn a little bit more about it, to share the vision and the passion, and to get you on board with what it's all about. I'll tell you a few things you need to know. Our chat function is open, so if you've got any questions as we go along, put those in the chat and then try and be patient because we'll answer them at the end, because obviously what we're about to say next might be the answer to your question. Our meeting is being recorded and we will send you the link to watch it again afterwards, and it'll be available on our channels for you to see as well or share with people that you know. So there we are. Without further ado, let's dive in to finding out a little bit more about the why behind this resource. I'm going to hand over to the lovely Jo, who's going to tell us why Nehemiah.
Thank you, Amy. Hi, everyone. If we haven't met before at one of these, I'm Jo, and I am the Written Resources Team Manager for Faith in Kids. So I just wanted to spend a few minutes sharing a little bit with you about this new resource, why we wrote it, how we wrote it. So you might have joined feeling quite daunted by the idea of teaching Nehemiah to the children in your church. If that is you, please don't worry. As we developed this resource, we really wanted to help leaders grow in confidence in teaching the Old Testament to children. And with that in mind, we have done all that we can to help anybody who might be feeling a little bit nervous or who might be doing this for the first time. I'll briefly mention that there are some very exciting videos, which we're going to have a sneak peek of later. And those videos will help with your storytelling. And also later on in this session, we've got some top tips coming from Amy about teaching the Old Testament generally. So hopefully, our hope and prayer is that by the end of this session, you'll feel more equipped to give teaching the Old Testament a go, but particularly that you will feel equipped and excited to teach Nehemiah. The other thing I'd love to say at this point is that this is the first Old Testament adventure that we've done, the first time we've worked through a book of the Old Testament from start to finish in a Sunday school. And we would really love to hear your feedback. If you use this resource either in Sunday school or anywhere else, please do get in touch and let us know how it went, how your leaders found it, how the children found it. There is a feedback form which Lizzie will be showing you later, but even if you just ping us an email, we would love to hear from you. So to give you a little bit of a flavour for how we got to writing this resource, the Bible itself tells us that all scripture is God-breathed and useful for teaching, rebuking, correcting, and training in righteousness. But many children are quite unfamiliar with large parts of the Old Testament. And if children hear and understand more of those parts, we think that should help them understand God's big story even more clearly than they do at the moment. And if children only hear and understand the New Testament, they're only having half of God's big story. So the Old Testament obviously helps children see so much more of God's character, love, and faithfulness. And it helps children see clearly why Jesus is the Saviour that we all need. So we thought we'd have a try at writing an Old Testament adventure and sharing that with you. And we know that many children won't have heard anything of the story of Nehemiah before. It's not often covered in children's Bibles, but we think that this book is really accessible and really exciting. So we thought we would write a resource on that for you to teach it to the children and hopefully share that action and emotion with them. Now, through the story of Nehemiah, we learn a lot about how God was at work in his people in the time of the Old Testament and how God is still at work today, building his church. And children are such an important part of God's building project today that we want to help them see their value and role. The book of Nehemiah gives us a wonderful picture of God's people working together on God's project. We see the highs, we see the lows, and we hope that that will encourage children to work together on God's building project today through whatever highs and lows follow. We're going to have a slide on the screen which gives an overview of the series. So this will be available, this already is available, sorry, on our website, and we'll be putting a link in to how you can find that in the chat. But you'll see from this slide that we have covered the whole of the book of Nehemiah. We haven't covered every verse, we haven't even covered every chapter, but we focused on the main events through the chapters of the book that will help children to see how God is at work today, as well as how he was at work in those times. And the key thing that, if you're familiar with our resources, you might notice is that we have 2 columns of Bible passages in the overview table. The first column shows the content of the story, kind of the chunk that we're covering in all of the lesson, whereas the second column gives you a focus passage which we're actually teaching from. So the video and the story cover more, and then we focus in on one small passage for the teaching time so that it's a more manageable thing than here are 2 chapters of the Old Testament, and there'll be more on that later. Moving across the columns, the truth that changes me is very firmly drawn from the book of Nehemiah. What's the big thing we want children to understand from the passage of the Old Testament? And then we move through to have a Faith in Kids looks like that focuses more on how that would change the hearts and lives of children today. So just to walk you through an example, in lesson 1, we look at Nehemiah, his knowledge and his confidence in God's promises, and how that leads him to pray. So we've got a truth that changes me. Nehemiah knows God's promise to live with his people, so he prays. And then our prayer for the children as they hear this lesson is that they would trust God's promises to them today, and that they would pray confident prayers as a result. I think the table, if you read it through in your own time, will give you a really good flavour of where the resource goes. The only thing I would say is that lesson 6 is slightly different from the other lessons because we visit the New Testament as well as looking at chapter 13 of Nehemiah. And we wanted to end the series talking about Jesus and his church, which is God's building project today. And we wanted to emphasize the links that we have made throughout the series by looking at a passage from Ephesians so that the children could clearly see that link in the last session. So as we read Nehemiah, we get this wonderful example of confident faith and wholehearted service, and a beautiful picture of God's people working well together to build God's kingdom. So we hope that teaching Nehemiah will give the children in our groups and everybody else the enthusiasm and desire to be more involved with God's big build today. And Lizzie, I'm going to hand over to you now, is going to walk us through the resource in a little bit more detail.
Thank you, Jo. So the resources that we have available, you can find all these on our website, faithinkids.org, Nehemiah, God's Big Build. We have all the Sunday school sessions that are available to download, as well as the link to our videos, which I'll tell you a little bit more about in a moment. And also we have a podcast series. We have one podcast for each Sunday school lesson, which you can make available and link to once you've taught the lesson in your church. Let's dive in a bit more into the Sunday school sessions. So if you know Faith in Kids, you know the format of our Sunday school sessions. We start off with some preparation for leaders, moving on to all together time, then our actual teaching time for our 7s and unders and our 8s and overs. And we have our craft, our chat time sheets, as well as our take-home sheet for families to continue the conversation at home. So everything that you would expect from a Faith in Kids lesson. You'll also see that in the preparation time, we have a new section here, how to use the video. This is in each of the lessons. The QR code will link you to a straight take you straight to YouTube, where you can see the video for that week. We're going to play video 1 now, so to give you a flavour of what the videos are going to cover. They don't tell the whole story of what we're teaching, but they help us with the narrative so that we can help our children to understand what's going on, the backstory that we might not necessarily be teaching in the lesson, but is really important for them to hear. Let's have a listen to Nehemiah video 1.
Have you ever longed to be somewhere else? Imagine you're sitting in a boring lesson, but you start to dream of being somewhere else. On the beach, sand in your toes, sun on your face, waves lapping.
Oh wait, that's not waves. You've just spilled your water bottle. Nehemiah, when he was at work, used to dream of being somewhere else. Not on the beach, but being with God's people in the home God had promised them.
A city called Jerusalem. Nehemiah lived in Susa, a city in Persia, miles away from Jerusalem. Despite the distance and the years that had passed since God's people had lived in Jerusalem, Nehemiah was longing for the day when they would be back in the home God had promised them. There, together, they could show the world how good it was to belong to God. But this dream seemed a long way off.
Nehemiah had an important job. He was a special kind of bodyguard to the king. But not the kind of bodyguard with walkie-talkies, body armor, or weapons. Nehemiah had a cup. His job was to test any drink before the king drank it. No one was going to poison the king with Nehemiah on duty.
One day, as Nehemiah was walking through Susa, he met visitors from Jerusalem.
All right, lads. What news from home?
Not good. The people are in trouble, the walls are broken down, the gates are burned with fire. God's people are in a mess.
Nehemiah was heartbroken. He dropped to the floor and wept. He mourned, he didn't eat, and he began to desperately pray.
Lord, the God of heaven, who keeps his promises to love people who love you, please hear me now. We have let you down. We have acted wickedly towards you. You said you would scatter us and send us out to the land if we disobeyed you. And we have. But you also promised that if we returned to you and obeyed you again, you would gather us back together and make us a dwelling place for your name. A people who can show the world how good it is to belong to you. Please, Lord, listen to me. Help me today and give me success as I go into the presence of this man.
Nehemiah picked up the cup and went to see the king.
Brilliant. So that is our video that we have, one for each lesson. Hopefully you enjoyed that as much as we did making them. It is, and that the children enjoy watching them as well. The next thing I'd like to just share with you is the fact that every single lesson has an opportunity for you to give feedback. As Joe has already said, we would love your feedback. This is our first venture into an Old Testament resource, and having some feedback, constructive feedback, is vital to us as we think about producing new resources for Sunday schools and for yourselves to be able to be used. So please do, when you teach Nehemiah or any of our other lessons, please do encourage your volunteers to give us some feedback about how the lesson went, whether the videos were useful, and other information as well that's on the feedback form. We'd love your feedback for that. Brilliant. I'm now going to pass over to Amy, who's going to help us think through some more of the Old Testament and why teach it. Amy, over to you.
Hello, lovely. Thank you. So exciting to see the videos. Like me, feel free to go over to YouTube later and get some popcorn and watch them all. So I hope you've got the idea from the video that you just saw that you would watch that with the children in your group. And then in the lesson 1, you would head into chapter 2 and say, what happened next? What did Nehemiah do when he went to see the king? What happened? As you explore our resource and as you get to work out how the videos and the teaching resources fit together, hopefully you will see, and this is the moment where I'm letting you behind the curtain into the machine of the things that we've thought about as we've put the resources together. So we're going to go through these top tips for you so that you can join us on the same thinking. So as we've put these resources together, this is what we've tried to do. So as you teach them, it'd be great if you had them in mind too. So first thing I want to say is know where this story fits. Where does the Nehemiah story live in the bigger story of the Bible? And that's for you as a leader to know. So you don't have to have every 5 and 6-year-old has this great, wonderful Bible overview that they really got it all now. We don't want to overwhelm them too much with information. So we want to give them the understanding that we have in as succinct a way as we possibly can. So if you think about that big Bible timeline, creation, Old Testament, God's promises, God's people, the temple being built, the people being gathered, the people being scattered, Jesus coming, where do we know where this fits? Do you know where this fits? So that if stuff comes up, that you can make it clear. Okay, so that's number 1. Do you know where this story lives in the big story? Number 2, I want to say we focus on God and not the people, particularly in the book where, like Nehemiah, where the characters are so big and there's so much happening, and Nehemiah is such a brilliant example. We want to remember that as much as we get to enjoy those characters, and they help us see more of God and who he is and what he's doing. So just try and remember that we want to focus on God through the people. So the people and the adventures that are happening is helping us see something more of God. Next point, we don't want to get lost in the detail. I think as a Sunday school teacher myself, this is the thing that I can find the hardest. When you look at a big load of stuff and there's lots of things happening and there's lots of people interacting and there's this detail over here and there's this detail over there, how do I decide what to include? How do I decide what to miss out? And so we've talked about this as a Faith in Kids team before. How do we stay on that one track? How do we go? We've used this idea before, like a train to one destination. In our resources, you'll see that's what we're trying to do when we've got that, the truth that changes me. That is the one place that we are going. So next, we're going to enjoy the action. We're going to enjoy the characters. We're going to enjoy the emotions, and those things are going to be what helps us make the connections to today. You'll see in that little video that we just showed us, that moment at the beginning where we're showing the child in a classroom. That repeats through every video. So we're just trying to give you a bit of a leg up in that moment. So have you ever looked forward to something? Have you ever longed to be somewhere? Have you ever struggled with something? So we're trying to give you a little bit of a help as to how we can make a connection with the emotion and the characters for each week. Okay, I hope this is all making sense so far and that you'll spot all of this in action in our resources. Finally, we want to look forward. What difference does it make to us today? It could be very easy to just teach the book of Nehemiah as a moralistic lesson. Here's a really good example to follow. Here's a really good guy doing a good thing in a good moment. But we're trying to take that journey forward. What is this teaching us as God's people today? How does this help us live? What difference does it make? We don't want the children to just leave on a Sunday being able to answer really good quiz questions and do a great score on a comprehension test on Nehemiah. We want them to grow in their own faith and think more about what it means for them to be joining in with what God is doing today. There we are. Now, there's a lot more I could say and a lot more as Faith in Kids that we could say about teaching the Old Testament. And I think we're about to have a really helpful poll to find out from you what you would like in that area. In fact, here it is. We are considering running a longer training session on how to teach the Old Testament to children. Which would you prefer? Give us a click, tell us what you think. Help us shape our future training. Call it apply, and then we'll find out. Are we done? Have you done it? There we go. The wonderful answers. That's really helpful. Thank you for letting us know. Nobody thinks that training isn't necessary. That's really good to know. Thank you. I just want to take a little moment before we go on to our questions and answers to say we're really grateful for the support that we receive from so many of you at Faith in Kids so that we're able to do what we're able to do and share these resources widely and for free. Obviously, they cost a lot of money to put together, particularly the videos this time. This has upped our budget in a big way, and it's been really brilliant to be able to put that resource in your hands. Please would you consider supporting us, giving monthly would be really, really helpful so that we can continue to put together resources like this that we can put in your hands that you can run with. We know you're passionate about teaching the Bible to your friends, to your children, to those in your family. So join us, please, and consider signing up. There's the link in the chat. Why not click on it and join our merry band of supporters? Joe, are we ready for a Q&A?
We are ready for a Q&A. We've had a couple of questions in the chat already. If anyone else has got any more questions, please put them in the chat now so that we can hopefully get through them. Just to say, in answer to one of the questions that's been asked about who the videos are aimed at, the videos are aimed at everybody. If you give the all-age talk, we suggest that you show the video as part of that. We suggest that you would use it in both the younger and the older teaching time. Hopefully, it would even be enjoyed by teenagers if you stretch to doing an 11 to 14s group. We've basically used the video to do a large chunk of the storytelling so that you don't have to try and read through 2 chapters of Nehemiah with your group. You can watch the video to do that. So all ages, we believe, would benefit from watching it. The second question we've had in the chat so far is about downloading the videos. It is possible to download the videos from YouTube. Lizzie, would you like to say anything more on that?
There should be a button underneath the video that allows you to be able to download them and use remotely on your computer or your tablet in your lessons. If you're struggling to do that, please do contact info@ and we can help with that.
Great. Sorry, I'm just checking things as
You've checked the chat. I did also want to mention that we also believe that repetition is a brilliant thing, particularly with children. So if you watched it as an all-age church together, so parents knew what was happening, and then you watched it again in your teaching time, sounds great to me. Yeah, if we learn anything from Teletubbies, which you might be too young to remember, we repeat and repeat and repeat. It's all good.
Amy, another question's come in. Do each of the lessons have a gospel link?
Well, there's the good news about who God is and who we are as his people. So yes, there is a gospel link.
Very good, thank you. Will there be a Faith in Parents podcast as well as for the children on this resource? No, there won't be, but encourage the parents to listen to the children's podcast. People can listen to it together as a family and hopefully have lots of fun doing that and recapping the story there. Have we covered everything? Oh, hold on, a new message.
I'm enjoying that we've already noticed the good old no-nonsense Yorkshire accent of Nehemiah. He's a good egg, is our Nehemiah.
I think we have answered all of the questions in the chat. This is a final call. If anybody wants to put something in, please put it in now. I believe that the answers to this will be sent out to people. Oh, here we go. Do you have a big story of the Bible framework you can share? Amy?
Not at the moment.
Short answer, and hopefully in time to come, we will have.
I also love that Jane imagines that we have this lovely overview of where all our resources fit. Jane, we will one day, but it's not there yet. You haven't missed it.
Thank you, Amy. Great. I think that's all. All of the questions have been answered. If you do have any more questions, please feel free to email info@faithinkids, and we will try and answer them. I know that some of you will probably have questions when you start looking through the material, so please get in touch if that's you. Hopefully we've got on the screen now a reminder of where you can go to find all of these resources. Please do check that out in your own time, and as I said, get in touch if you've got any questions. Hopefully you're already on our mailing lists. If you're not, please do sign up to stay in touch. If you lead the children's ministry in your local church, please stay in touch. If you don't, still stay in touch, or perhaps ask your children's ministry lead to sign up so that they get first access to everything new and upcoming in the coming months. I just wanted to say, if you do lead the children's ministry in your church, we have a training session coming up in less than 2 weeks now, on the 28th of January. Our Inspire training scheme will be looking at welcoming families with additional needs. It's a 2-hour session. Should be really helpful for anybody who leads children's ministry, whether you're paid or unpaid. Please do come and join us. Hopefully a link to sign up will be going into the chat now. Thank you very much. That's gone into the chat. Also, just to say that Easter is coming up. Easter is coming up very, very quickly for those of us in ministry. And this year, we have put together some new materials to accompany the Wonder of Easter Sunday School series, which was published a couple of years ago. So we have an all-age service and a family outreach event to use alongside those Sunday School lessons, or to use just on their own, if you would prefer. A proper launch of the Wonder of Easter will be taking place during Inspire. Please do look out otherwise for emails from us, which will give you more details about that. But very soon you will be able to get everything that we're offering for Easter this year, and we hope that that will be of service to you and to your churches as well. Thanks so much for joining us. We hope that you have a really lovely afternoon. And we really hope that you enjoy using Nehemiah and teaching it to the children in your church and sharing this wonderful story with them.
Gonna wave goodbye. Thank you so much for coming.
We'll all wave. Amy's waving. Bye.
Go watch some YouTube videos and have some fun.
Bye.